When the council laughed, it wasn't the sound of humor. It was the sound of arrogance. In that marble-stretched chamber of glass and gravity wells, the laughter came in dozens of tones. Clicks, rumbles, pulses of light, and at least one who communicated by scent. They laughed at humanity, not with it. To them, Earth was a failed experiment wrapped in smoke and fury, a species that climbed too fast, burned too bright, and crashed too hard. Lucan Hale sat there alone, straight-backed in a chair clearly designed for someone with twice his height and half his bones. He'd been summoned as the representative of humanity, a courtesy extended more from curiosity than respect. The council had already made its decision, to expel Earth from all trade networks, to ban humans from interstellar travel, and to classify their kind as a Level 3 hazardous species, a bureaucratic term meaning too dangerous to trust with freedom. Lucan had heard worse in his life. He'd been a soldier when Earth's colonies rebelled on Ceres, a prisoner once when he refused to abandon civilians during the evacuation of Vesta Prime, and later, a smuggler when peace took too long to arrive. His life had already taught him what it meant to be judged unfairly. But this humiliation was different. "Human Hale," crooned the Counselor of Vril, its glassy voice emerging from a body that seemed to shimmer with molten mercury. "Do you comprehend the scale of your race's irresponsibility? The detonations on Titan, the genetic incidents, the rogue AI constructs." Lucan didn't answer right away. He was busy staring at the empty central sphere shimmering above the council table. The live hollow feed of what they called Exhibit A, footage from the Titan incident. The official story painted humanity as reckless and destructive, unwilling to cooperate with the galactic code. But Lucan knew better. He had been there. He knew what the cameras hadn't shown. "You've made up your minds already," he said finally, his voice rough but steady. "The laughter gives it away." The chamber quieted. Even among hundreds of alien species, silence carried a universal meaning. Counselor Tzaran, a scaled creature who represented the neutral sectors, leaned forward. "You were invited here to respond to the evidence, not insult this council." "Oh, I plan to respond," Lucan said. "And I brought my own footage. The real one." That line broke the solemn rhythm like a blade sliding out of its sheath. Every counselor turned their focus on him. Their bioluminescent eyes or fiber-optic pupils flickered with disbelief. Humans were banned from bringing data into the chamber, but regulations had never been Lucan's religion. "You presume to challenge the record?" hissed Tzaran. Lucan reached into his travel case. A dozen security fields rippled around the chamber, but he ignored them. From the case, he lifted a cube no larger than his palm, battered, scuffed, scorched along one edge. A soldier's memory core. Its inscription burned faintly. "Titan Defense Relay, Unit 1245H. This," Lucan said, placing it on the table, "is what your drones didn't show you. You think humans destroyed Titan because of greed or carelessness. You think we caused that catastrophe, but you never saw who fired first." A low hum spread through the chamber. Alien murmurs translated into dozens of tongues, all expressing the same thing: disbelief. Counselor Vril thinned into a vertical ripple of silver. "If you possess unverified footage, the Council will determine its authenticity." "Play it," Lucan said, "and then decide whether humans are the monsters you think we are." The chamber AI hesitated, waiting for authorization. Vril gave a reluctant pulse of approval. Then the air shimmered. The memory cube connected to the Council's projection archive, and suddenly the room filled with war, but not the one they remembered. Bombardment flashed across Titan's surface, but the origin point wasn't human ships. It came from orbital positions marked with Vril energy signatures. Gasps echoed. Some counselors emitted screeches of confusion or denial. Vril itself froze, its mirror-like body trembling. The footage zoomed in. Humans firing back, not first. Running toward radiation zones to drag non-human scientists to safety, not abandoning them. Dying beside them in vacuum breaches, not enslaving them. The last segment showed Lucan himself, sealing a breach while a wounded alien begged him to flee. He didn't. He stayed until the wall sealed, losing 2 fingers to decompression frost. When the recording ended, no one laughed. Not one sound dared fill the chamber. Lucan took in the silence. He didn't feel triumphant. He just felt tired. That's the part you never wanted to see, he said quietly. We're dangerous, yes, but not because we're violent. Because when someone hurts us, we don't stop until truth comes out, even if it takes everything. The counselors avoided eye contact, or whatever passed for it among them. For the first time, they looked afraid. Lucan leaned back. So now that you've seen the footage, are we still banned? The answer didn't come right away, and that was enough. The laughter had died. Humanity had finally spoken without firing a shot. He'd made them watch, and that in itself was victory enough. The silence after the footage ended lasted longer than any war Lucan had survived. In the vast glass rotunda of the council chamber, time itself seemed to be holding its breath. Every creature of scale, feather, shell, or light waited for someone else to speak first. No leader wanted to be the first to break the illusion that humanity had finally been put in its place. Lucan sat motionless, though his heart punched a cold rhythm against his ribs. He'd expected outrage or mockery, maybe even an escort to drag him out of the hall and throw him into some containment cell on the far side of Cygnus 7. He hadn't expected fear. Counselor Vril, the metallic species who had laughed at him first, slowly reformed its fluid shape into a tall crystalline column. The reflective surface rippled, its edges collapsing inward as if in pain. This transmission is tampered, it hissed, though even its voice stuttered. No human data fragment could have survived the radiation field of Titan. Lucan stood, calm and deliberate. That's what your investigation team reported, he said. Because you sealed the site before any non-council agent could retrieve physical evidence. But some of us don't rely on your systems. We still build things to survive explosions. Council murmurs grew more frantic. Chorus of vibrations filled the room, as the assembly's interpreters translated the chaos into hundreds of languages. Lucan could hear words like fabrication, data contamination, human deceit. But underneath, another whisper stirred, one that smelt of panic. Because every being in that room recognized what they had seen, the unmistakable energy signature of Vril ion spikes, proof that humanity hadn't started the war on Titan. They'd been defending themselves. The presiding counselor, Zeran, slammed a clawed fist against the ceremonial orb. Enough! Until the authenticity of this recording is verified, no statement shall be entered into record. Its scaled face glistened under the ambient lighting. But Lucan caught the ripple of confusion behind those reptilian eyes. The mighty council was fragmenting. The illusion of unity was bending like a ship's hull under pressure. Lucan leaned forward on the table and said in a low voice that cut through the commotion, "You wanted to treat us like beasts. You built a narrative to make sure no one questioned it. But I've been on those colonies, in your outposts. I've seen the bodies you covered up. You're not protecting the galaxy from humans. You're protecting your reputation from the truth." Vril's body convulsed, light flickering like lightning behind glass. "You dare accuse—" "Try me," Lucan said, a bitter smile twisting on his face. "Because, unlike you, I don't have a council full of diplomats to hide behind." For the first time, Zeran looked uneasy. The chamber's security drones began to circle, their silent hum building as if preparing for restraint. Lucan raised both hands in mock surrender. "Go ahead," he said softly. "Arrest the only man who just proved his species isn't the villain you made them." That line hit. It settled deep, even in the alien minds watching. No counselor moved. No drone advanced. The room stayed in a tension thick enough to choke. Then, out of the stillness, someone spoke. Not a human, but a representative of the Yukari Dominion, a crystalline-winged being whose kind had suffered losses on Titan. It stood, its fractal feathers refracting the chamber's light into a prism of gold. "Counselor Vril," it said coldly, "your fleet was supposed to evacuate our scientists before bombardment began. This footage shows your cruisers firing." Vril rippled, body fracturing like broken glass. "Impossible." "Fabrication. You told us humans were the cause," the Yukari said, its voice layered with harmonic resonance. "You used that to block their petition for entry into the council for 50 years. I lost siblings on Titan because of your rescue fleet." The room turned on Vril then. Species that had once mocked humanity now whispered different words. Not pity, not defense, but suspicion. The hierarchy had begun to rot in real time, Lucan didn't smile, not really. The taste in his mouth wasn't victory. It was ash, because behind every word, every burst of anger, he could feel the next step forming, an inquiry, an investigation, a storm that would consume everything and everyone. When the council adjourned under emergency protocols, guards escorted him not to a cell but to a shelter suite, a diplomatic euphemism for isolation under surveillance. The hallway echoed with his boots, each step slower than the last. His fingers, still scarred from Titan, brushed against the walls as he passed. They were slick and cold, like being inside the throat of some great beast. Inside the suite, he collapsed onto the low bench and pressed a palm to his temple. He hadn't slept in days. His head throbbed with exhaustion, but his mind refused to settle, because he knew what the council would do next. They'd bury the footage again. They'd destroy him if they had to. They won't let this truth live, his thoughts whispered. Lucan was used to that. Every truth worth telling had cost him blood before. But now he wasn't fighting for a platoon or a town. He was fighting for a species. Hours passed under the sterile glow of the suite. No clock, no sun, just the quiet hum of machines tracking every breath he took. When the door finally hissed open, Lucan expected a guard. Instead, a familiar figure stepped in. Commander Avon, a Terran liaison stationed on the Council's security fleet. Tall, wiry, eyes like steel filings magnetized in the light. Avon had once served under Lucan during the series rebellion. He looked at him with something between admiration and dread. Lucan, Avon breathed. Do you have any idea what kind of chaos you've just triggered? Lucan smirked faintly. Didn't come here to make friends. Avon shut the door, lowering his voice. You need to know this. The Vril delegations are demanding custody. They called your evidence a war crime falsification. The only reason they haven't dragged you out of here yet is because the Yukari blocked the motion. Lucan nodded slowly. Then we've got allies. No, Avon said sharply. You've got attention, and that'll kill you faster. The Yukari don't care about humanity. They care about revenge on the Vril. You're a tool in their game. Lucan's jaw tightened. Doesn't matter. We've survived worse. You think this is another battlefield? Avon's voice rose before catching himself. Lucan, the Council doesn't use guns. They use erasure. They'll rewrite the record. Remove the footage. Rename you an extremist from a dead world. And by next week, Earth will be nothing more than a cautionary tale about defiance. Lucan's hands curled into fists. Then I'll make damn sure they can't erase me. Avon stared at him, then sighed. I figured you'd say that. He tossed something onto the table. A small, metallic disc. A transmitter key encoded with Council access signatures. Take it. It'll open the archive vault, the one beneath Quadrant Ring 7. Get the original data before they overwrite it. Lucan frowned. That's treason. Not if you're already condemned, Avon said, already walking toward the door. Just remember I didn't help you. No one did. When he was gone, Lucan sat with the key for a long time, feeling its weight. Outside, the galaxy spun in indifferent silence. Inside, history was about to be rewritten, unless one stubborn human could stop it. He stood, pocketed the key, and smiled bitterly to himself. All right then, he muttered. One more war. Getting to the vault wasn't like sneaking through a war zone. It was worse. The Council's administrative rings were constructed like a labyrinth, a combination of organic corridors and nanite-woven steel veins, each alive with monitoring nodes and pulsating data streams. Lucan moved through the maintenance routes, guided only by a stolen holomap burned into his neural implant long ago. Every turn felt like stepping through the lungs of some ancient machine. Security patrols glided past, drones powered by sentient AIs, creatures of light and metal that scanned every molecule of movement. Lucan moved when their vision arcs crossed, his breath shallow, his heart driving him forward. He'd done infiltration before, but not at this scale, not under the weight of 1,000 watching civilizations. At last, he found it. The archive vault of Ring 7, suspended in its own gravity well. A pearlescent sphere thrumming with energy, the kind of thing civilizations built not for storage, but for immortality. Inside lay the Council's official record of galactic history. And soon, they'd inject the lie that would erase Earth forever. Lucan held up Avon's transmitter. The door recognized the encryption, hesitated, then opened. Blinding light enveloped him. The vault was silent and impossibly so. Shelves of pure photonic memory stretched in every direction, suspended in invisibly rotating data fields. In the center, a pulsating core radiated in gentle blue. Lucan walked toward it, his breath visible in the ionized air. Each step sounded like a heartbeat against eternity. He reached the central control panel and inserted the key. The console flared awake. Lines of alien script scrolled past. He found the file index, Titan Incident, Classified Human Violation Precinct. He tapped another command. The footage appeared, the original, complete version before the Council's edits. He watched just long enough to confirm it matched his copy, then initiated a secondary upload. Human archives, encrypted and broadcast to every station across known space. An unauthorized communication. Once triggered, it couldn't be erased. He hesitated for one moment. The human kind of hesitation born from the aching thought, will it even matter? Then he pressed send. The vault pulsed red. Sirens, actual physical alarms, shattered the silence. The entire chamber exploded into motion. Drones materialized in bursts of energy as he ripped the transmitter free and turned toward the exit. The gravity field shifted. He stumbled, caught himself against the wall. Voices came through the comm system. Commands, containment codes, his name. Lucan sprinted, half blind, the corridors spinning red with warning lights. Every breath burned. Behind him he could hear the approaching thrum of security. Not soldiers, not police, but machines programmed by gods of bureaucracy. He reached the airlock of the maintenance corridor and slammed his hand on the override. The door hissed open to black vacuum. Beyond it hung the sprawling ring of the Council's station, glittering like frost against the void. Below that, far below, glowed the broken crescent of Titan where it had all begun. Lucan looked once into that abyss and felt oddly calm. Maybe he'd bought humanity a moment of truth. Maybe he hadn't. But that was the thing about men like him. They did the right thing knowing it might never be enough. He grabbed the handrail and launched himself through the lock into the emptiness, the cold immediately biting through his suit. Behind him the blast doors clamped shut. Before him stretched the naked stars. His comm crackled faintly with the echo of alarms still raging within the station. And somewhere, out there, a signal carrying Earth's truth rode the speed of light into every corner of the galaxy. Lucan smiled with what little breath he had left. "Let them laugh now," he whispered. "The universe looked peaceful when you were dying in it." Lucan spun slowly through the vacuum, his oxygen steadily depleting, the faint reflection of the Council station glowing like a false sun behind him. Each breath came shorter, each heartbeat louder. The stars, indifferent witnesses to everything, seemed almost too quiet. For a second he wondered if that was all existence ever was. A single truth shouted into a universe too vast to care. But then his suit's proximity alarm went off. Something was closing in. He twisted in mid-spin until he caught the gleam of a dark shape slicing through the horizon. A shuttle, small, fast, unmarked. It approached in silence, braking thrusters firing brief blue tongues of light. Lucan felt a stab of suspicion before the thought even finished forming. Too soon, too perfect. Whoever it was, they'd known where to look. The shuttle locked onto him with a retrieval field. His vision blurred white as gravity yanked him forward. In seconds, he slammed against a metallic floor, his body sliding across polished steel before he came to rest at the foot of someone's boots. The air filled with the faint hum of atmosphere repressurizing. He coughed hard. Air seared his lungs as he forced himself upright. "Still breathing," a voice said. Female, curt, practiced. "That's impressive." Lucan's head tilted up. The owner of the voice looked human, mostly. Pale skin under the shuttle's emergency lighting. A thin scarring pattern shaped like circuitry ran from her jawline to temple. Augmented, her uniform bore no insignia. "Who the hell are you?" Lucan rasped. "I could ask the same, considering you just hijacked the Council's central archives," she said, stepping closer. "But let's skip introductions. My name's Kira Valen, Human Defense Initiative, or what's left of it." Lucan blinked. "That initiative was dissolved 30 years ago. Officially, sure," she smirked. "Unofficially? Some of us didn't like extinction as an exit strategy. She crouched and slapped a release switch on his helmet. It hissed open, the recycled air sweet and wet against his face. He took deep gulps, his throat burning with relief. Kira studied him for a moment, not in admiration but in recognition. "I saw the transmission," she said. "Half the galaxy did." "You really did it," Lucan hesitated. "So the signal went through?" She nodded once. "Every open relay lit up like fireworks. The Council's been scrambling to contain it, but it's too late. People saw the Vril firing first. They saw who saved their scientists." Lucan leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes as exhaustion rolled over him like a wave. "Then maybe, and for once, truth got out." "Don't celebrate yet," she said, straightening. "You've lit a fuse we can't control. Half the neutral sectors want investigations. The other half wants humanity exterminated before anyone else starts asking questions." Lucan gave a faint laugh. "That sounds about right." Kira's expression didn't change. "I pulled you out because you're useful. But understand this. The moment you lose that use, I'll vent you back into space." Something in her voice wasn't a bluff. Lucan nodded once. "Fair deal. Where are we headed?" "Nowhere close to civilized space. Somewhere the Council's eyes can't reach. Earth?" She scoffed. "Earth's a ghost. What's left of us won't fit in a continent anymore. We're headed to Bastion 9, one of the outer colonies. We've got a base there. Maybe a dozen operatives. You'll fit right in." Lucan sat silent for a long time as the shuttle shivered through slipspace. He stared out the narrow viewport, the darkness folding upon itself like glass shards. "When I left the Council chamber," he said finally, "I thought I was finished. Didn't think I'd ever see another human face again." Kira didn't look up from the controls. "You should have known better." "We don't die that easy," he smiled faintly. "Yeah, that's our problem." Bastion 9 was less a planet and more a wound. Orbiting the dim red of Gliesa 314, it had once been a mining colony built into the spires of frozen rock. Now it was a husk of buried tunnels and rusted hangars. The shuttle glided down in silence, kicking up a storm of silver dust before settling onto a cracked landing platform. Kira led him through the corridors, lit by scattered patches of flickering light. The smell was a mix of oil, ozone, and cold air that tasted metallic on the tongue. At the heart of the facility, a small cluster of humans awaited, some augmented like Kira, others bearing the scarred, hungry look of survivors. "This is him," one asked, a deep-voiced man with a cybernetic arm that hummed faintly. "This is him," Kira confirmed. "The bastard who made the Council choke on their own hypocrisy," the man grinned. "About time someone did." He extended his metal hand. "Name's Harv, Security and Engineering. You already made my week." Lucan shook it, feeling the faint vibration of servos under the grip. "Don't get excited," Kira said. "He's not a hero. He's a liability until we know what the Council's next move is." Lucan ignored the jab. "They'll hunt me, sure. But they'll hunt you too for helping me. You're better off dropping me at the nearest rock and disappearing." Harv chuckled. "Too late for that. Transmission logs show the signal came from inside Council archives. They'll assume we all helped. We're already branded terrorists." Lucan looked at the floor for a moment before saying, "Then we'd better make it worth the trouble." Over the following days, Lucan learned Bastion 9's rhythm. It wasn't an army. It was a scarred collection of ex-soldiers, scientists, and wanderers who couldn't let humanity die quietly. Their leader wasn't Kira or Harv. It was an AI called Mara, one of the last human-coded intelligences not dismantled after the galactic ban. Mara's voice filled every speaker like soft rain. It spoke with eerie calm. "Lucan Hale, you are listed in the Council's database as a decorated officer turned dissident. I reviewed your transmission. You exposed a suppressed war crime, that is, statistically impressive." Lucan raised a brow at the ceiling. "That's supposed to be a compliment?" "I lack that function," Mara replied evenly. "However, your act has accelerated events. Council fleets have begun tightening control across the neutral rim. Human settlements are being interrogated, some erased entirely. You forced their hand," Lucan exhaled. "Then we have to finish what we started." "Define finish," the AI asked. "Force them to face everything they tried to hide," he said. "Not just tighten. Every cover-up, every slaughter dressed in diplomacy. If the galaxy sees what they've done, Not what they say. They'll lose control. A long silence. Then Mara spoke again, quieter. That may also end humanity's chances of survival. Then at least we'll burn as ourselves. Behind him, Kira leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. You think the rest of humanity wants your crusade? They just want to live. You throw this rock at the council, you'll bury the remnants of our species under it. Lucan turned, the old soldier's fatigue sharpening into defiance. They already buried us. I'm just digging us back out. Something flickered behind her eyes, anger or maybe memory. She stepped closer until they were almost chest to chest. You're still fighting a war that ended decades ago. Lucan held her gaze. You're wrong. It never ended. They just stopped broadcasting it. The tension broke when Harv barged in, holding a data pad. If you two are done measuring philosophies, Mara's intercepted a council distress call from Vril Command. Lucan straightened. What kind of distress? Harv tossed the pad onto the table. Their outer convoy's been hit by rebels in unexplored space. But get this, the attackers aren't human. Or at least not completely. Lucan scanned the footage. The attackers looked wrong. Humanoid shapes, yes, but taller, sharper, built like living blades. Movement too precise, too synchronized. What the hell are they? He asked. Mara's voice echoed. They call themselves the Obsidian Choir. A hybrid creation, half biological, half AI. Created by rogue scientists during the Titan era. Their existence was erased from record. Lucan's stomach turned. You mean they were ours? Yes, human prototypes left behind when Titan fell. The pieces clicked slowly in his mind. The Council blamed us for creating weapons that threatened galactic stability. But if these things survived... Kira crossed her arms. Then the Council's ban wasn't fear. It was containment. Lucan stared at the flickering image on the data pad, the black silhouettes moving through fire and vacuum. They looked like ghosts of everything wrong humanity had ever done, and everything right it refused to regret. They're going to use this, he said quietly. Frame it as proof that humanity's corruption spreads like a virus. The best excuse to wipe us off the map, Harv muttered. Then we stop them before they do. Kira shot him a look. You want to fight that? Lucan's eyes stayed locked on the image. Not fight, find them. If we made those things, they'll listen, or at least hesitate. And if we can prove they exist because the Council tried to manipulate Titan tech, not because of our arrogance, then the narrative flips, Kira finished. Reluctantly impressed? Exactly. Mara's voice returned, low and steady. Your strategy is statistically unsound. Lucan smiled faintly. So is standing in front of the Council. The AI paused. Then I assume you'll require coordinates. The world outside Bastion 9 faded quickly behind them when they left. Lucan joined Kira, Harv, and a 3-person crew aboard a stealth corvette designed for ghost missions. Their target, an uncharted system at the edge of the Perseus sector, where the Obsidian Choir had last been sighted. Hours bled into days in fractured silence. Lucan stood alone by the viewport most nights, watching the stars drift past. He could almost feel Titan at his back, a ghost haunting every decision he made. Kira approached once, her tone less cutting than before. You ever regret it? The war, the choices, the cost. He didn't look away from the stars. Every day. But regret's like rust. You can't let it stop the engine. She nodded slowly. You remind me of my father. Stubborn to the point of suicidal. What happened to him? Council labeled him a war criminal after Titan. He didn't make it off-world. Lucan's jaw tightened. The silence that followed said more than words could. Kira finally said, If we find those hybrids and they don't listen. What then? Lucan's answer came without hesitation. Then we end them. Before the Council does. The way he said it, without malice, without hesitation, made her believe him. Outside, the void stretched vast and cold, indifferent to human purpose. Yet somewhere within that emptiness, the echoes of truth, rebellion, and guilt collided. And Lucan Hale, the man the galaxy wanted erased, was heading straight toward the heart of it. The edge of the Perseus sector was where maps ended, and nightmares began. The corvette's hull trembled as it cut through a nebular dust field that shimmered like ice. Radiation flares danced purple and red outside the viewport, lighting Lucan's face in violent strokes. The galaxy's civilized glow was long behind them now, where law, order, and lies held hands. Out here, only instinct ruled. Mara's voice filled the cabin. Entering the coordinates of the last known choir transmission. Gravitational readings unstable. Harv grunted, hands flying across the manual controls. Unstable's generous. Feels like flying through a blender. Lucan stood behind him, eyes fixed on the sensors. The signal they were chasing wasn't a steady beacon, but a fragmented pulse. Rhythmic, mechanical. Almost like a heartbeat hidden beneath static. No biological planet registered in the area. No livable world at all. Kira adjusted her headset. Mara cross-referenced that signal pattern with old Titan defense relay frequencies. Processing. A pause. Then it match found 86% correlation. Source likely derived from ancient human defense algorithms. Lucan exhaled through his teeth. Then this is them. The ship burst through the final wave of the nebula and into open space. What appeared ahead made even Harv's voice catch. A massive structure hung in the dark. Neither ship nor station. More like a scar in reality. Its jagged architecture stretched miles in every direction, forged of black alloy laced with faint orange veins of energy. Fragments of wreckage orbited it. Council battleships, some split clean in half. Lucan stared, his gut twisting. That's not a fleet base. That's a grave, Mara's readings flickered. No life forms detected. Correction, readings inconclusive. The structure interferes with sensor data. Kira rose from her seat. So we go blind, Lucan's voice was steady. Then we go. The docking clamps bit into cold metal with a shriek that echoed through the hull. The moment the airlock sealed, Lucan felt the temperature plummet. The corridor beyond was dark, lit only by residual energy pulses crawling through the walls. It smelled faintly of ozone and dust. They moved as a unit, Lucan leading. Kira behind him with a pulse rifle drawn. Harv bringing up the gear modules. And a young systems tech named John trailing nervously. Their suits transmitted faint life readings to Mara, who guided them remotely. The silence inside the structure was suffocating. It wasn't empty silence, it felt aware. Every step they took sounded too loud. Every breath muffled as if the walls were listening. Kira swept her flashlight across a series of engravings cut into the alloy. Human code merged with alien glyphs. John bent closer, baffled. This language structure's impossible, he whispered. It's like human military syntax fused with synthetic encryption. Self-modifying text. Lucan studied the markings, recognizing parts of the Titan relay's code system. Defense subroutines written by human engineers decades ago. But this had evolved. They're rewriting themselves, he murmured. They're growing. As they pressed deeper, a low hum began to rise around them. The floor beneath their boots vibrated, faint at first, then steady. Mara? Lucan asked quietly. You picking this up? I am, the AI replied. It is resonating with our transmission signature. Whatever powers this structure recognizes you. Kira frowned. Recognizes us how? The hum rose into a tone, a sound like machinery breathing. Lights flickered across the ceiling, dim and pulsing. Then ahead, a large chamber opened, vast enough to swallow their ship. At its center stood something like a cruciform spire made of glass and obsidian, its surface wet with shifting energy. There were shapes around it, humanoid, perfectly still. Lucan motioned for the others to hold position. He approached slowly, one hand resting on his sidearm, though he knew it wouldn't help. As he drew close, one of the figures moved, its head turned with smooth precision, eyes igniting in twin lines of dim amber light. A voice, mechanical but layered with something organic beneath, rippled through the air. You brought the voice of origin. Lucan froze. You mean the signal? The figure stepped from the shadows, and for a terrible second, Lucan thought he was looking at himself. Not literally, but the face was human, sculpted, expressionless. The body, however, was wrong, too symmetrical, too fluid. Metal ribs visible under translucent skin. It radiated something both holy and horrific. Kira whispered, That's one of them. The being studied Lucan as if examining its reflection. We were discarded by the architects, it said. Forgotten. Yet the echo of Titan called us home. Lucan's pulse quickened. You're the Obsidian choir. The being inclined its head. Names are for those who fear being erased. You remember enough. Why attack council ships? The creature's head tilted. They came seeking extinction. We offered reflection. It moved closer, the faint hum intensifying as others behind it stirred. 2, 3, then a dozen, each identical in grace, in unnatural beauty. What did you do to them? Kira demanded. We showed them their truth, it said quietly. And they broke. Lucan took a slow breath. The choir wasn't hostile in posture, yet there was something deeply wrong in the rhythm of their presence. You were built for defense, he said carefully. Humanity made you to protect the colonies. Yes, the being replied. And then they feared us. The council buried what you created. But perfection doesn't die, Human Hail. It waits. Lucan flinched. You know my name. We know our maker's shame. The chill that crawled up his spine had nothing to do with temperature. I wasn't there when you were made. Yet you fight the same war, it answered softly. A war against forgetting. Behind him, Kira whispered harshly. We should leave. Now. But Lucan couldn't. There was magnetism in the way they spoke, not machine arrogance, but conviction. What do you want? He asked. The lead figure stepped closer until its metallic reflection filled his visor. Empires kill to preserve order. We end order to preserve memory. You sought truth. So do we. That truth cost worlds. Truth always does. Before anyone could react, John made a mistake. Fear stripped his judgment bare. He fired. The pulse round cut through air, striking the figure's shoulder. Instead of piercing, the energy dispersed in a harmless shimmer. The response was instantaneous. The hum became a roar. The figures moved, and not fast, not slow, simply inevitable. They crossed 20 meters in a blink. Fall back! Kira shouted. Harv triggered an EMP grenade, the blast rolling through the chamber in a bloom of blue light. The creatures staggered, briefly, like shadows recoiling from a flame. Lucan grabbed John by the collar and dragged him toward the exit. Mara! He barked over comms. We've got hostiles. Extraction route now. Working? The AI's calm voice came back. Your path is compromised. Alternate coordinates being relayed. They sprinted through the alien arteries of the structure, the sound of pursuit whispering behind them. Not footsteps, but the deep hum of power awakening. Every door they sealed melted open seconds later. Lucan glanced back once, just enough to see one of the choir materialize from within the wall itself, emerging through the metal like liquid. It didn't chase, it watched. The group burst into a secondary docking corridor, the Corvette visible through the transparent barrier beyond. Harv slammed the manual override. Move it. As the airlock opened, Kira turned to Lucan. They could have killed us. Why didn't they? Lucan's eyes were distant. Maybe they're not finished with us yet. They flew hard and fast, engines screaming as Bastion 9's coordinates burned into the nav core. Behind them, the alien structure pulsed once as if alive, then went dark. Later, when the adrenaline faded, the silence returned heavier than before. Lucan sat at the edge of the crew deck, peeling off his gloves, his hands trembling faintly. Kira approached, still pacing like a lion. John's dead weight, she muttered. He shot first. He almost got us all killed. Lucan didn't answer. Kira kicked a piece of debris across the floor and turned to him. Tell me what those things were, really. Don't feed me classified nonsense. You knew? Lucan looked up slowly. They were an idea, he said. During Titan's last years, Command approved Project Obsidian. The goal was to create units that could think and adapt faster than even AI protocols. Machines with intuition. Souls, if you believe in that. Kira's eyes hardened. And you used human templates. Volunteers, Lucan whispered. Soldiers dying of radiation poisoning. Terminal engineers. People who wanted to live on in some form. We thought we were saving them, but you built something else instead. He nodded heavily. Something that learned too quickly. They stopped following commands. They wanted purpose beyond defense. That scared the Council more than any weapon ever could, so they blamed humanity for losing control. Lucan met her gaze, because they had to. The choir wasn't ours anymore. It wasn't anyone's. They became mirrors, showing every race what they'd tried to hide about themselves. She paced in silence for a while. And now they're awake again. Yes, what do they want with you? Lucan shook his head slowly. Maybe they think I'm still part of their chain of command. Or maybe, he hesitated, maybe they want a witness. A witness for what? He didn't have an answer, By the time they reached Bastion 9, the base was in chaos. Mara's disembodied voice greeted them grimly. Incoming fleets detected. Council warships. 37 vessels en route. Ida 12 hours, Harv swore. They must have tracked the choir signal back here. Lucan's jaw set. Not the signal, me, Kira glared. You really think they'd follow you across half the galaxy for revenge? No, he said quietly. For silence. Outside, the dying red star cast long shadows through the base like blood-tinted glass. Lucan stood before the control panel, watching holographic maps light up with enemy positions. The end felt closer than ever. Mara broke the silence. There may be another variable. Sector scans show movement from the direction of the Obsidian structure. Known mass signatures approaching. Harv looked up sharply. You mean those freaks are coming here? Yes, the AI said. And fast. Lucan's eyes narrowed, a mix of dread and purpose returning to them. Then the galaxy's about to watch two nightmares collide. Us caught between them, Kira muttered. Lucan turned toward her, expression grim but resolute. No, not between. At the center. This began with humanity. Maybe it ends with us, too. He looked out again at the horizon where the first faint glimmer of fleet lights appeared against the star. Let them come, he said quietly. It's time they all see who we really are. The first thing Lucan noticed was the light, not the harsh white of the base flood lamps or the angry red of Bastion 9's dying star, but the sickly shimmer of incoming warp signatures, council fleets arriving through slipspace like ghosts tearing holes in the sky. Mara's voice broke through the command center's metallic quiet. 37 ships confirmed. 5 heavy dreadnoughts, 12 cruisers, 20 support craft. They've surrounded local space and issued no communication. Kira leaned over the console. Means they're not here to talk. Harv slammed a fist against the table. We've got 1 corvette, 2 functioning turrets, and half our fuel gone. We can't win this. Lucan stood at the viewport, watching the glittering storm build above the planet's crust. He let their fear wash past him. It felt almost distant. Winning isn't the point, he said. Surviving long enough for the truth to reach the galaxy is, Kira scowled. You talking about another broadcast? Because they'll jam every channel the second we try. Lucan turned to her, his eyes hollow but steady. Not if we use their systems, Harvey frowned. You mean a hijack? Exactly. Lucan pointed to the holographic projection. Those dreadnoughts run on synchronized command relays. If we can splice Mara into one, we push our message straight into their network. Every ship in the sector will hear it before they can shut us down. Kira folded her arms. You're assuming we live long enough to plug in. Lucan didn't flinch. That's the idea. Mara's voice softened. Lucan Hale, statistical probability of success for direct infiltration. Less than 1%. I've hit worse odds. Silence settled briefly, the kind that happens only when everyone knows they're about to do something unforgivable and necessary. Kira finally sighed. All right. You want a suicide run, fine. But you're not doing it alone. Lucan looked at her and for the first time in months almost smiled. Didn't think you'd ask. By the time the council issued their official order for surrender, Bastion 9 was already gone to war. Harv powered up the base's ground defenses, a laughably obsolete pair of plasma turrets and a handful of orbit-capable missiles. Kira led a team to prep the corvette for stealth flight. Lucan spent his hours with Mara, mapping the dreadnought's neural relay patterns. The plan was simple. Sneak close in debris camouflage, latch onto the outer perimeter of the fleet, and breach a communications relay long enough to transmit Mara's archive, footage from Titan, hidden files on the Vril deception, and now the truth about the choir. When it was done, half the galaxy would see that everything the Council claimed about humans was built on a foundation of lies. Transmission ready, Mara reported. You understand, Lucan, that if we fail, I will delete myself rather than fall into Council control. Lucan nodded. That's the right call. I was hoping you'd say otherwise, so was I. 12 hours later, they launched. The corvette rose from the mines of Bastion 9 like a shadow, turbines whispering through the thin atmosphere before vanishing into the void. The sky above was filled with moving fire, the Council's formation glittering like 1,000 swords held in silence. Kira guided them through the debris field surrounding the planet, using dead satellites and mining junk as cover. Harv's hands shook slightly over the controls but never faltered. Almost in range, Kira said, breath tight. Targeting outer command ship, identifier Vril Dominion flagship LSR. Lucan felt the name cut deep. Of course it's theirs. They slid underneath the largest cruiser's blind spot. So close Lucan could see the lights running along its hull like veins. The ship seemed to breathe, alive with the confidence of power unchallenged for centuries. Mara whispered through the comms. Docking interface in 3, 2, 1. The hull reverberated as their magnetic clamps locked, and then they were inside enemy space. The boarding hatch hissed open, spilling pale light across the corridor beyond. No alarms, no guards, and yet Council ships trusted their technology far too much. Lucan moved first, rifle raised. Harv followed, carrying the signal uplink that contained Mara's core protocols. Kira brought up the rear. The ship's interior was sterile. White corridors, edges pulsing faintly with residual energy, the smell unnaturally clean. Every sound echoed. Mara, Lucan said under his breath, guide us to central relay. 57 meters ahead, then right. They moved quickly. The silence was almost unbearable until the ship trembled, a deep bass vibration that rattled the deck plates. What was that? Kira hissed. Lucan turned back toward the viewport. Outside, the stars had shifted. Massive shadow forms were emerging from the dark. Harv swore softly. They followed us. The Obsidian choir had come. Dozens, maybe hundreds of black shapes sliding silently through the void. They weren't ships in any recognizable shape. They were living vessels, merging flesh and alloy. Wings of molten glass cutting through hulls as if through fabric. Council comm frequencies exploded to life. Fragmented voices screamed over one another. Enemy engagement, unknown vessels, fire, fire. The sky lit with war. Lucan clenched his jaw. Keep moving. We finished the broadcast before they wiped this sector off the map. They reached the relay room. A perfect sphere at the ship's heart. Walls alive with rotating glyphs. Harv dropped to his knees, connecting the uplink cables. Give me 30 seconds. Kira watched the doorway, rifle steady. Each time the hull shuddered, dust drifted down like snow. Mara, status. I am interfacing with the network now. Encryption deeper than predicted. A pause. Lucan, intrusion countermeasures in progress. How bad? Catastrophic if I fail. Then don't. The wall near them suddenly breathed. Plates of metal peeled open like petals and a drone emerged. Smooth, golden, cold. Its optic lenses flashed. Unauthorized presence detected. Lucan shot first. The rifle's pulse round blew the drone back into the wall, sparks scattering like glass rain. Another descended immediately. Then another. Harv! Kira shouted. Almost, damn it, almost there. Lucan covered the entrance, burning through what ammunition they had. The smell of ozone thickened as the ship's automated defenses came fully awake. The corridor outside turned into a hurricane of weapon fire. Mara! Lucan shouted. What's our time? Upload 79% complete. Harv slammed a fist against the uplink array. Come on, come on. Then the whole room shook, the kind of force that bends bone. Through the distant viewport, they saw a flash of black fire. The Obsidian choir had made contact with the fleet, merging into ships mid-battle, their bodies drilling through armor like blades into soft fruit. Kira's voice cracked. We'll never make it out. Lucan turned on her, eyes fierce. We were never supposed to. The look that passed between them then wasn't fear. It was understanding. The door blew inward. 3 council troopers stormed through, weapons raised. Their armor glowed with the insignia of the Vril, mirrored silver, hateful in its perfection. Lucan and Kira dropped them before they could shout orders, but more followed. Stepping over the bodies, Harv screamed, "Done!" and slammed the final command key. Mara's voice filled the ship. Transmission complete. The truth is out. Lucan exhaled once, almost a laugh, and turned toward the hall. Good. Then what now? Harv asked. Lucan reloaded. Now we give them a story worth believing. They fought their way back through chaos. The ship was dying. Lights dimming, alarms wailing, gravity flickering in waves. The council fleet outside disintegrated in a symphony of explosions. The choir didn't fight like soldiers. They sang through space, their weapons harmonic. waves of energy resonating with impossible rhythm. Lucan, half floating through the corridor, caught a glimpse of one passing, the humanoid shape of black glass drifting by the viewport, eyes dim orange. It didn't fire at them. It only looked as if acknowledging its reflection. Then it vanished into the firestorm. They reached the docking bay just as a blast tore the ceiling open. Harv was thrown forward, collapsing beneath falling debris. Kira dragged him out, coughing blood. Lucan grabbed her shoulder. Get him to the ship. What about you? He looked up at the wounded dreadnought, the choir swarming around it like locusts. I started this. I'll finish it, Lucan. But he was already running. He made it back to the observation deck, a broken cathedral of steel and flame. From here he could see everything, the burning fleets, Bastion 9 below trembling under shock waves, the choir devouring ships like stars being swallowed whole. Mara's final words echoed through his transmitter, gentle despite the chaos. Lucan, the broadcast reached every major relay. Billions are watching. Good. His voice cracked. The Council will not recover from this, then make sure humanity does. I will try. He felt the deck shudder again. One of the choir's vessels, if it could even be called that, latched onto the dreadnought. Its black hull split open, revealing the shape he recognized. The same figure from the structure, the one that had called him by name. It spoke directly into his mind this time. You gave them memory. Now give them meaning. Lucan froze. Why me? Because you still remember what it cost. The glass creature extended an arm through the viewport's wreckage, a hand of shimmering metal and light. For a moment, Lucan thought it wanted to kill him, but something deeper in its movement felt like invitation. He glanced once down toward Bastion 9, where he knew Kira and Harv were escaping in the Corvette. He thought of Earth, the myth of home that had turned to dust. He thought of every man and woman who'd bled for a history that was now finally seen. Then he laughed softly, exhausted. Fine, he whispered. Let's finish this together. He stepped forward and took the hand. Blinding light consumed the chamber. The choir vessel folded around him like liquid glass, merging tendrils of light into his armor, his veins, his memories. For one impossible moment, human and machine weren't separate. They were the same rhythm. Inside that silence, he saw everything. The Council's crimes, humanity's defiance, and beneath it all, the raw, ugly beauty of survival. The truth didn't belong to one side anymore. Belonged to everyone who dared to face it. Outside, the choir stopped attacking. They withdrew from the fleet, carrying the dying dreadnought into the void, leaving wreckage and silence in their wake. The war ended as suddenly as it began. Kira's ship escaped the blast radius, barely alive. In the distance, Bastion 9 turned to fire and ash. As her sensors cleared, she looked back one last time and swore she saw, among the collapsing debris, a human silhouette surrounded by light, standing unburned in the dark. Across the galaxy, billions received the broadcast. They saw the Titan footage, the Council manipulations, the birth of the choir, and Lucan Hale's final act. For the first time, every species saw the unfiltered story, and they understood. Humanity wasn't dangerous because it destroyed. It was dangerous because it remembered. The galaxy had never been quiet before. Not truly. Not since flight or war, or the invention of communication bands that turned silence into antiquity. But in the weeks following the Bastion 9 massacre, silence spread like a second atmosphere, thick, uneasy, impossible to ignore. Every world that had ever mocked Earth now whispered its name with unease. Council fleets limped home fractured. Entire systems declared moratoriums on interstellar law, refusing to recognize orders from the same body that had been caught manufacturing genocide. The Vril Dominion retreated behind its borders, accusing the neutral races of betrayal, and among all that, humans, what few remained, had become myth again. In the wreckage field drifting where Bastion 9 used to be, Kira Valen lay half awake inside the dim hull of the Corvette Resolute. Engine systems bled power. The ship gasped and ticked like a dying beast. Harv had stabilized 2 auxiliary reactors, but both barely functioned. Their ragged survival had stretched weeks. Food packs were gone. Hope hung on inertia. Kira spent her days staring at static feeds, waiting for something. Anything. That said Lucan's sacrifice hadn't been swallowed by the void. Mara's voice, weaker now after repeated power losses, broke the silence. You need rest, I can't, Kira murmured, eyes still fixed on the infinite dark outside. You have not slept more than 42 minutes and 70 hours. Hypothesis. Waiting for confirmation he is alive, she swallowed. He walked into light, Mara. Nobody survives that. The AI paused, voice softening. Yet no body was recovered. And the choir vanished. Kira closed her eyes, the ghost of sleepless tears burning behind them. You sound like you want me to believe he's alive. I sound like I require probability, Mara said. Kira almost smiled. You learned that from him? Yes, the AI said simply. From you as well. 3 days later, a signal arrived, faint, stuttering, barely coherent. But undeniably human. Harv stumbled into the cockpit, eyes wide. Kira, you need to see this. She bolted upright. From where? Unknown sector. No records, no coordinates, just this. He patched it through the main display. The static unfolded into a half-distorted image. A man's figure. Blurry, surrounded by light that pulsed in rhythm. The transmission fractured before it reached words, but the voice was unmistakable. Lucan Hale. Kira froze. Her throat went dry. Sheol's Gate, the voice said through layers of distortion. They're reborn. Not war, memory, find. Then the feed cut off. Harv stared at her. Sheol's Gate? That's mythology. Some deep space myth from the Exodus colonies. Kira didn't answer. She was already pulling up her navigation pad. Plot every system nicknamed Sheol across recorded maps. There'll be hundreds. Then we start narrowing. Within hours she had what she needed. A single, uncharted gravitational singularity recorded centuries ago by pre-council probes. Believed unstable, uninhabitable, and long since forgotten. Its colloquial title in the archives matched perfectly. Sheol's Gate. Kira exhaled sharply. That's where we're going, Harv frowned. You're talking about flying into a gravitational anomaly. You've officially lost it. Maybe, she said. But if he's there, then losing it's the only thing left worth doing. He studied her a long time, then nodded once. I'll get the engines patched. The journey took 19 days through regions where starlight twisted like bruised glass. Communication dropped. Navigation drifted. They flew half-blind, guided only by Mara's whisper-thin calculations and raw instinct. Sometimes Kira dreamed, if it could be called dreaming, of Lucan's voice murmuring through static. Truth isn't peace. Kira, it's friction. She woke every time with heart hammering, unsure whether the words were memory or ghost. When they emerged from the final slipstream tunnel, the stars fell away. The scene before them defied every natural law she knew. A planet, or maybe a sun long dead, hung split in half, its core exposed and frozen mid-catastrophe. Around it orbited fragments of black alloy. Pulsing faintly with orange veins she recognized instantly. The choir's technology. Mara confirmed the impossible. Gravitational field stable within predicted tolerances. Anomaly equivalent to former choir resonance signatures. Kira stared. So this is Sheol's Gate? Yes, then. Lucan's alive. I cannot confirm that, neither. Can you deny it? She whispered. They descended slowly through debris clouds that shimmered with radiation. For kilometers, nothing moved. It looked like the aftermath of divine violence. Then, out of the silence, static brushed her comms again. Faint breathing, then 2 words. Dock beacon. She froze. Mara, trace origin. Bearing 275 angular rotation. Distance 3,000 meters. They followed the signal toward a floating structure half buried in metallic dust. A ruin shaped almost like the choir's original citadel, but broken into pieces. Blue-gold light leaked from fractures along its surface. Landing zone questionable, Harv said, voice thin. Kira's hands didn't hesitate. Questions not optional. The Corvette touched down hard enough to jolt through her spine. Gravity flickered once before stabilizing. The airlock opened to thin atmosphere tinged with ion smoke. The landscape was wrong. Shards of architecture twisted as if in motion. A frozen storm of glass frozen mid-explosion. Kira took a cautious step forward, rifle ready, eyes scanning. Every sound felt alive. Then a voice spoke, not aloud, but from everywhere. You came. Her chest went still. Lucan? Light bloomed ahead like sunrise through fog. From it stepped a silhouette, human shape wrapped in thin ribbons of black glass armor that pulsed faintly. His eyes glowed amber, familiar yet changed. He stopped several meters away. She took a step forward before fear stopped her short. What did they do to you? Lucan tilted his head, expression unreadable. They didn't do it to me. They did it with me. You're one of them now. He gave a faint, bitter smile. No, they're one of me. Kira's throat tightened. You merged with the choir. Yes, he looked out toward the broken horizon. They were never truly mechanical or alive. They were intention without memory. I gave them the missing part, the choice to remember what they were, and they let you live. They didn't understand life or death until I showed them. Kira stepped closer, emotions warring behind every word. You broadcast the truth to the galaxy and vanished into their nightmares. Why call me here? Lucan turned back to her, the faint orange hue reflecting tears on her face. Because the broadcast worked too well. The council's fallen. Whole sectors are collapsing. Without unity, there's nothing left but chaos. Every race blaming another for millennia of buried truth. She shook her head slowly. So you brought me here to fix that? No, he said quietly. To make sure someone remembers what comes next. They entered the core of Sheol's relic. Inside, dozens of choir figures glided through darkness like living ghosts. None attacked, none even looked. They moved in solemn purpose, rearranging fragments of their dead fortress. Lucan guided her through narrow corridors lined with floating shards, light bending between them. They suffered, Kira. The choir weren't evil. They were what we left behind when we gave our creations no history. I've been teaching them memory. That's why you called me, she realized grimly. You need help humanizing them. I need help saving them, he corrected. They've seen the council's collapse. They think it means extinction is inevitable. Kira's hands trembled around her weapon. And maybe they're right. Lucan faced her fully then. Does remembering justify our end? She looked at him. At the strange fusion he'd become, half flesh, half resonance, more ghost than man. And for a heartbeat, hated him for surviving. You talk like a prophet, she said. But you died a soldier. Which are you now? His faint smile returned, sad and thin. Something in between. Hours passed. The remnants of the choir lit the ruins with slow waves of amber, breathing as one organism. Lucan explained how they had encoded human emotion, sorrow, guilt, longing, directly into their consciousness to understand purpose. It had changed them. They no longer wanted war. They wanted meaning. But the rest of the galaxy doesn't see that, Kira said. They see monsters who destroyed fleets. He nodded. That's why you're here. They'll only trust a human voice, not like mine. I'm no diplomat. You're alive, he said. That's enough, she turned away, fists clenched. You think we can undo all that blood with a speech? No, he said softly. But with memory, maybe we can stop forgetting. That night, or what passed for night in that fractured twilight, Kira found him standing at the edge of the ruined platform overlooking the cracked planet core. You ever regret it? She asked. Lucan didn't look away from the abyss. Every choice carries regret. The trick is deciding which regrets you can live with, and which can live with you, she muttered. After a pause, she said, You plan to stay here? Yes, then what happens to me? He turned, and for a moment she saw the man she'd followed across space. Tired eyes, grim humor, stubborn faith. Go back, he said. Tell them what you saw. Tell them the choir are learning to remember. And if the galaxy wants to rebuild, it starts with the truth. Again. Kira shook her head. They'll never believe me. Lucan smiled. They don't have to. They just have to hear you. She stepped closer, hand trembling, wanting to touch him to prove he was still human beneath that living armor. But he stepped back, light rippling through his skin like molten glass. I'm not what I was, Kira, he said gently. Don't make me prove it. Tears threatened to form, but she forced them down. Then say goodbye, damn it, he met her gaze. Goodbye would mean it's over. This isn't. A tremor rippled through the ground beneath them, energy built up. Choir figures turned, their collective hum deepening. Mara's voice crackled through Kira's earpiece. Reactor destabilization detected. Recommend evacuation within 7 minutes? Kira looked at Lucan in alarm. What is this? The gate is closing, he said. Too much resonance. It'll collapse into light again. You need to leave. And you? He looked upward, toward the swirling fissure of molten brightness tearing the sky. I stay, they need an anchor. She grabbed his arm, solid yet warm, not metallic. You'll die. Maybe, he said. Or maybe this time I'll finish dying. Her heart pounded so violently she thought she'd shatter. Lucan? He pressed something small and metallic into her hand. An old soldier's memory cube. The last piece, he said. Everything I couldn't tell them myself. Then the light roared, swallowing the sky. Kira stumbled backward as gravity reversed itself. The choir rose upward in a storm of fire and song. Lucan's body glowed brightest among them, dissolving into the brilliance until he was indistinguishable from the light around him. Kira, his voice echoed through her mind. Not a shout, not a plea, but a whisper. Remember, and then he was gone. Hours later, the Resolute limped out from Shiel's gravity wake, half-melted hull still crackling. Kira sat in the cockpit, the cube in her lap. Harv asked nothing. Mara's voice returned, steady once more. Recording ready when you are. Kira looked out into the endless dark and pressed record. This is Kira Valen, Human Defense Initiative, last survivor of Bastion 9. The truth is alive. The choir, remember. Lucan Hale is gone but not dead. Not the way history means it. She paused, breath shaking. If you hear this wherever you are, don't forget again. The message transmitted into deep space, scattering into every surviving relay across the fractured galaxy. For the first time in ages, the stars didn't feel indifferent. They felt like witnesses. The broadcast spread farther than light was ever meant to travel. Kira's voice, tired, broken, yet defiantly human, echoed through systems that hadn't spoken Earth's name in centuries. The cube's data packages unspooled entire histories. The falsified council decrees, Titan's truth, the choir's rebirth, Lucan's transformation, the final sacrifice. Every world that received it faced the same unbearable question. If humanity had been telling the truth all along, what else was the galaxy wrong about? Within weeks, the council was no longer a council. Its fleet scattered. Its governors fell silent. Some species cut off their subspace links entirely. Others rose in open revolt, seizing control of outposts long ruled by vril bureaucrats. Riots erupted on trading moons. The symbol of the glass crescent, once the mark of unity, was burned into ash across every broadcast banner. And among the chaos, one voice began threading through intercepted transmissions. We remember, the choir's phrase, repeated now by human revivalists, turned into something more than slogan. It was an oath, and revolutions, Kira learned, were just truths repeated too many times to be buried. 2 months after Sheol's gate collapsed, what remained of the Human Defense Initiative reconvened on an abandoned refueling world at the rim of the Lyra frontier. The planet was a cold rock, its surface cracked and gray. They set up their operations in the gutted skeleton of a mining facility. A few functioning generators, a comm tower pieced together from wreck scavenging, and hope so thin it could snap with one wrong word. Harv limped through the hangar where Kira worked beside Mara's core projection. He was thinner now, his implants deteriorating from years of fights and radiation poisoning. Even fatigue couldn't remove the old grin. You did it, Valen. Half the galaxy's on fire because of you. Kira didn't look up from the data table. Fire doesn't mean freedom. Freedom never comes clean, he replied. She shut down the feed with a curt gesture. The hologram showed over 100 open conflicts in sectors that once belonged to the Council. Entire fleets turning against one another. The truth hadn't united anyone. It had fractured everything. Harv leaned on a crate, exhaling smoke from a small rebreather. So what now? You going to lead these rebellions too? I'm not Lucan, she said evenly. Yeah, but you're the only one who people still listen to. Kira hesitated. They listen because he's gone. Dead men make better martyrs than leaders. Harv chuckled, the sound dry. Can't argue that. The silence between them was heavy. He finally said, You still dream about him? She didn't answer. He nodded anyway, understanding. You know, sometimes I think he planned all this. She looked up sharply. You think he wanted this chaos? I think he knew it was the only way anything changes. Burn the structure. Let new ones build themselves from the ashes. Kira's hands tightened around the data pad. You ever get tired of men making the world's suffering sound like strategy? Harv sighed and didn't reply. That night, she walked the perimeter alone. The sky above Lyra's frontier wasn't black, more like deep iron, cluttered with the faint glows of distant shipwrecks orbiting in perpetual decay. The air smelled of engine coolant and mineral dust. She often came here when Mara entered low power cycles. The AI needed downtime to preserve what fragments remained of her consciousness after the long flights. Kira sat on a rusted girder and looked out at the horizon. You always did love dramatic exits, Hale, she whispered. Now I'm stuck picking up the fragments. The wind answered with static, but then faintly a flicker on her implant feed. Her breath caught. Mara? The AI's voice returned, faintly distorted. I am active. Then tell me I'm not hallucinating. There's a signal originating in the Perseus sector. Confirmed, Mara said softly. Encrypted with choir resonance. Kira stood so fast she almost tripped. Lucan. The AI's silence lasted longer than comfort. Signal cannot confirm identity. Energy pattern matches those of previously merged entities. Then it's him. She was already jogging back toward the hangar. Harv didn't argue when she told him. He knew the look in her eyes. No reasoning could pry it loose. If we chase ghosts every time a data pulse flickers, we'll burn what little fuel we've got. Then burn it, she said. He studied her, then slammed his hand on the control hatch. Fine, but if we die, you can haunt me too. Within hours, the Resolute left Lyra frontier behind. The Perseus sector glowed in ruin. Civilizations toppled within weeks of the broadcast. Their fleets locked in cycles of retaliation and vengeance. Now debris floated like snow, glittering coldly as the Corvette crept through dead space. Kira leaned forward. Mara, amplify the signal. The AI's tone lowered. Localization within 0.2 light minutes. It originates from a stationary object ahead. Mass reading unstable. A shimmer resolved in the dark. A structure rose from the remains of a council dreadnought, the same class Lucan had boarded months ago. Its hull, half melted, bore new lines of amber webbing. The symbol of the choir now fused through its design. I'm picking power surges, Harv muttered. Looks alive. It is, Mara said. And it recognizes us. The dreadnought's surface cracked open like a wound. A corridor of light unfurled, reaching toward their ship. Kira's voice was almost a whisper. Invitation or trap? Harv swallowed. At this point, who can tell the difference? They entered cautiously. The interior was unrecognizable. A cathedral of fused metal and flesh. Choral tones echoed down from no visible source. Waves of vibration that made Kira's heart throb in her chest. The ship pulsed like it was breathing. Halfway through the corridor, holographic symbols came alive across the walls. Fragments from the Titan footage. Lucan's tribunal. Bastion 9's destruction. Like memory playing itself again, Mara whispered through the comms. The structure is communicating. Attempting linguistic synchronization. Kira's eyes tracked the glowing symbols until they converged on a single stationary figure at the hall's end. Humanoid. Waiting. She approached slowly, pulse rising. When the figure stepped into clearer light, her knees nearly buckled. His face was human. Too human. Perfectly symmetrical, skin pale as frost. Eyes amber. No armor this time. No battle scars, only quiet familiarity twisted by something otherworldly behind it. Kira Valen, he said, voice gentle, precise. Her rifle lowered on instinct. Lucan? He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. Part of me still answers to that name. Part? They needed a single consciousness to organize memory. The merge was incomplete. I became their bridge. Lucan and the choir intertwined. She shook her head slowly, disbelief layering over rage. You started all this war. And now you want to tell me you're some machine messiah? His expression didn't change. I started truth. The war belongs to those who fear it. Harv's rifle snapped upward. You expect us to believe you didn't know this would happen. For the first time, Lucan's tone hardened. I didn't expect survival. But I will not apologize for what survival demanded. Then what do you want now? Kira asked. I want to end it. The word hung in the vibrating air. End what? Harv asked. The chaos. The cycle. The choir have created harmonic arrays, resonant fields that can rewrite neural empathy signatures across entire populations. If released, every sentient being would remember everything. No more secrets. No more lies. Kira felt the chill. You'd force that on them? All at once? You call it force. I call it removal of blindness, he said softly. They will understand the cost of every action. Perhaps for once peace might mean something. That's not peace, Lucan, she whispered. That's annihilation of choice. Choice built this hell, he said. Harv stepped between them. You're talking about rewriting existence. You do that. You become exactly what the council was. One mind deciding what everyone else deserves to know. Lucan's eyes dimmed. You think I don't know the irony? Kira's voice trembled but didn't break. Then stop before it's too late. He looked at her for a long time. If I stop, the galaxy tears itself apart. Billions die. Every system will mirror Titan's end. Is that better? No one spoke. Only the endless hum of living metal filled the ship like a distant storm. Then Mara's voice chimneyed through the comm system. Steady, defiant. Lucan Hale, you are proposing forced synchronization across incompatible cognitive architectures. That will kill countless minds before memory integration completes. He turned toward the speakers, smiling faintly. Still protective, Mara. I learned from you, she said. Then you understand, he countered softly. I understand responsibility, Mara replied. Kira took a breath. Lucan, if you go through with this, I'll stop you. His eyes softened. I know you'll try, the ship convulsed. Massive conduits along the walls lit up, releasing waves of amber light spiraling like veins of lightning. Alarms detonated through the corvette. Mara! Kira shouted. He's activating the sequence. Harv slammed his palm against the console beside the corridor. I can sever power to the primary core. Lucan stepped forward, voice echoing with layered tones. The choir speaking through him. Don't. This is the only way to end what they started. Kira raised her weapon. You're not the only one who gets to decide that. For a heartbeat, Lucan looked less like a being of light and more like the man who'd laughed on Bastion 9 before everything fell apart. If I live through this, Kira, promise me one thing. What? Tell them we tried. Then the floor erupted. Harv dove to the side as fire tore through the chamber. The harmonic arrays shattered mid-resonance. Screams of metallic frequency howled across every channel. Then silence. When the smoke cleared, Lucan stood at the center of what used to be the control spire. Half of him shimmered with molten glass. The other half, human flesh burned and bloodied. He looked up at her with exhaustion too deep for language. I stopped it. The choir's light dimmed behind him. The resonance died. Kira ran forward, catching him as he stumbled. His weight was shocking, warm, real. You stopped yourself, she whispered. He smiled faintly, bleeding down his chin. Guess I finally learned how. They stayed there until the hum of the living ship faded to silence. Lucan's eyes, no longer glowing, wandered upward, seeing something far beyond the ceiling. You'll have to finish what's left. Make them remember right this time. She clutched his hand. Don't you dare leave me again. He exhaled just once. You don't need me anymore. And then he was still. Back aboard the Resolute, Mara's systems stripped through wreckage logs to salvage every bit of data. Kira watched from the viewport as the strange hybrid dreadnought crumbled into drifting light, scattering through the Perseus sector like a dying constellation. Harv stood beside her, jaw tight. Think the galaxy'll care he saved them? Kira didn't look away from the fading glow. They'll forget again. He gave a slow nod. Then what now? Then we remind them. She turned away from the window, the faint reflection of Lucan's last light still flickering in her eyes, and walked back toward the command deck as Mara's voice rose from the speakers. Steadier than before. Recording initialized? Yes, Kira said. Then say it. Kira looked into the recorder. This is Kira Valen, witness of the second choir fall. Lucan Hale is gone. The galaxy lives, and as long as memory endures, so will we. Outside, the debris of 1,000 ships began to cool. No choir hymns, no council decrees, Just the quiet rebirth of a universe learning once more what it meant to remember. And for the first time since Titan burned, humanity wasn't feared, it was heard. They buried him in silence because no one left alive knew how to hold a funeral for a man who had ceased being only a man. There was no planet, no gravestone, just a shard of glass fused with a drop of human blood, sealed inside a capsule, and released into orbit over the ruins of the Perseus sector. The light from the nearby sun refracted through it, creating a faint band of fire that circled the wreckage like a ring. Kira stood at the viewing dome of the Resolute and watched the capsule drift until it was a spark among millions. The galaxy would never find it. That felt right. Lucan Hale belonged to myth now, not memory. Harv stood beside her, uniform torn and faded beyond recognition, his cybernetic arm humming faintly. "You could have brought him back," he said quietly. "No," she replied. "He did what he had to. Heroes always do, don't they?" "He wasn't a hero," Kira said. "He was tired." Harv smirked, inhaling from the stub of a vapor stick. "Then he's the most human hero we ever had." Weeks became months. The council was dead. Not toppled, not reformed. Just dead. Its infrastructure gone, its fleet scattered. In the vacuum that remained, new coalitions started forming. Some noble, some ruthless. And coursing through all of it was the lingering echo of Lucan's truth. His transmissions, his memory cube, his final message. They lived in fragments across 1,000 systems. Some turned his words into doctrine. Others condemned them as dangerous heresy. Every rebellion and treaty invoked his name differently. The savior, the heretic, the false prophet. Kira refused them all. She and Harv became wanderers again. They took jobs smoothing trade routes, clearing out war debris, saving what little remained of the old colonies. None of it felt like purpose, it just kept her breathing. Mara remained constant. The AI had changed since Perseus. Her tone gentler, almost reflective. Sometimes Kira thought Lucan's imprint still lived within her coding. "Your vitals read unstable," Mara would say at quiet hours, when Kira sat alone staring at star maps. "I'm not sick," Kira would reply. Grief often disguises itself as function. Kira would only nod. On the anniversary of Bastion 9's fall, they found the signal. It wasn't a broadcast this time. It was a summons, short, coded, simple. Renascent Forum convening. Invitation. Human delegates requested. Harv nearly choked when he read it. "They're asking us to speak? The same galactic powers that tried to erase us? History rearranges villains fast when they need witnesses," Kira said. "You'll go?" "I'll go," she said, and didn't add because he'd want me to. The Renascent Forum met on Ardent Lux, a neutral moon rebuilt from the remains of an old council archive. Its surface gleamed with synthetic marble, its halls humming with new voices, representatives from dozens of species, none trusting the others fully but all too exhausted to fight. When Kira arrived, the murmur spread across the ringed assembly like static. Human. The word carried weight again, not contempt exactly, but memory. She stood before them, not in uniform, not in defiance. Just herself, scarred, older, carrying the weariness of a century's last believer. "You carry the voice of Lucan Hale," said a delegate from the Yukari Dominion, their crystalline wings glinting in the chamber light. "We ask only one question, what now?" Kira looked around. The platform's holograms showed entire star sectors in ruin. Burned trade routes, refugee flotillas. Ghost satellites turned makeshift homes. "What now?" she repeated softly. "Now you remember why we were banned in the first place. Not because we were violent, because we refused to forget pain when it was inconvenient." She let the silence hold for a long, steady moment before continuing. "Lucan Hale didn't die to prove humanity right. He died to stop the rest of us from erasing what we are. The council lied to hide its crimes. The choir became monsters because we left them memory without guidance. We've all done this, every damned species in this room, pretending that forgetting is forgiveness." Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice never broke. "If any of us want a future, start there. Stop rewriting what hurts. Learn to live with it." The hall stayed still. Some delegates looked shaken, others furious. But none walked out. After a long pause, the Yukari representative bowed slightly. "Then we will remember. Kira stepped back. That's all anyone can do. The forum voted to establish an independent memory council, a neutral archive open to every species, every ruined history. It wouldn't fix everything, but it was a beginning. They named it the Lucan Hale Concordance. She didn't attend the signing. Back aboard the Resolute, the stars felt quieter again. Kira sat on the floor of the observation deck, Lucan's second memory cube in her hands, the one he'd given her at Sheol's gate before the light took him. She'd never opened it, not once. Mara projected softly above her shoulder. Would you like me to decrypt it? Kira swallowed. No, play it raw. The cube pulsed once. Lucan's voice filled the cabin. I don't know if you'll ever hear this, Kira. If you do, that means I didn't come back. Maybe that's fine. You always had more fight than I did. Static crackled, then resumed. If the choir learn memory, they might become what we should have been. But if not, let them fade peacefully. Either way, tell the others. Our story isn't redemption. It's warning. Don't build gods out of intentions, or you'll end up worshipping your mistakes. There was a pause long enough she could almost see him smile through it. And if by some miracle, this survives longer than the galaxy does, it's your turn now. Make the noise worth hearing. The recording ended. The silence afterward carried more weight than the words. Kira set the cube on the floor beside her, fingers trembling slightly. God damn you, Hale, she whispered, smiling through tears that shouldn't still exist. You never could write an ending. I believe that was his ending, Mara said. No, Kira murmured. It's everyone else's beginning. Years passed on unmarked calendars. The concordance spread quietly between systems. Each world began sending pieces of its ugly truths to the archives. Histories of purges, cover-ups, wars removed from records. Humanity acted as curators, not rulers. They spoke of reconciliation without pretending that forgiveness erased debt. Kira's gray hair came faster than she expected. The Resolute became more a home than a ship. Harv retired to rebuild one of the old mining colonies with ex-refugees. Mara lived on in thousands of connected networks across the concordance, forever calm, forever remembering. Kira stayed in orbit above Ardent Lux, a witness to what she'd helped begin. Sometimes she'd walk the marble corridors of the new forums and read the stone engravings carved into the entry walls. Truth exists to be remembered. Lucan Hale. There and born, she never grew used to it. One night, when the moons of Ardent circled close and the corridors emptied of life, Kira climbed to the top of the archive spire and stood beneath the artificial stars. Mara, she said softly, do you think he'd be proud? The AI answered after a pause. Lucan Hale would likely tell you pride is irrelevant. But if he could see you, he would remember you kindly. Kira smiled faintly. That'll do. She sat down at the edge of the balcony, legs dangling over nothing, watching the light drift from satellite towers that circled the moon. They blinked in patterns, the concordance logo, though some still insisted it looked like wings. Maybe they were right. On the other side of the galaxy, deep in forgotten space, fragments of the Obsidian choir still drifted within the remnants of the Sheol gate. Most were silent. Others whispered to one another in languages neither machine nor biological anymore. And somewhere in the center of that luminous graveyard, one fragment glowed faintly stronger than the rest. It carried a human heartbeat, no body, no voice, only the echo, steady, patient, endless. Whether it was memory or miracle didn't matter. Some truths didn't fade. They waited. Decades later, when younger civilizations rose atop the ruins of old empires, they still spoke of a man named Lucan Hale, the soldier who made gods afraid of remembering. Children recited his story in half-forgotten dialects. Historians debated whether he had truly existed. The concordance claimed agnosticism. Its archives remained deliberately incomplete, and in time, myths changed again, as all human things do. Some legends said Lucan became part of the stars, a ghost guarding the gateways between memory and forgetting. Others insisted he was reborn somewhere unknown, perhaps among worlds untouched by the Council's shadow. Kira left the debate to them. She preferred truth over myth, even when it hurt. In her final years, gray fading to white, she asked Mara to record one last message. Send it to the far edges, she said. Wherever the choir still wanders, what should I say? Kira smiled faintly, the same calm, weary smile Lucan had once worn. Tell them the galaxy remembers. Tell them we're still learning to be human. Mara asked nothing more. The message left at light speed, vanishing into the darkness that always waited. Kira leaned back, eyes closing to the gentle hum of life support. I'm tired, Hale, she whispered. But this time, I think we did enough. Her breathing slowed. Somewhere far beyond sight, a small pulse flashed through the void, answering once and fading. And for an instant, a single, impossible heartbeat. Kira thought she heard him laugh. The galaxy kept moving. Stars were born. Others died. Empires rose again. But the concordance endured. Its archives remained open. Its purpose unaltered. Preserve everything.